Yeah, I think that's important too. Like, exercise helps you get out of your head. Because obviously if you're hurting, like,
Yeah, bro.
you're really tired, you're not focused on what you're thinking about.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, I don't know, it helps you, like, get into your body more and really embody your experience, which I think is an important part of dealing with your emotions, especially anxiety. Yeah, like, anxiety comes from not, like, living within the present moment most of the time. You're either in the future or the past. So that's why people talk about like grounding. So if we want to talk about that, you said
of course
you had something that you usually do.
Like, in my mind, I've been calling them quick meditations, but that clearly isn't what it is. But the way that I employ it is that I really find myself who I am as an individual when I'm faced with frustration. Like, I would love to just throw what appears in my brain out, and that's how I've carried myself my entire life. But with this quick grounding, I find it's very easy for me to close my eyes, to take a deep breath, and I remind myself, like, I'm standing in, let's say, my living room at home in Calgary. I'm surrounded by person X, person Y, and person Z. It's this day, you know, just reminding myself, like, what is going on. It really helps me.
I think that's a really good way to, like, come back to the present, is to, like, physically orient yourself and just kind of be like, where am I right now? And I don't know, it seems so simple, but it's definitely worked for me too. And I think, like, the breath is an easy one to come back to just close your eyes, and like, deep breathing, like, physically, like, calms you down too. So it'll, like, help you set your nervous system into rest mode when you, like, breathe into your belly. And then so I don't think it's wrong to, like, see it as a quick meditation, because I think that meditation is just a longer way of coming into the present moment. You're just practicing it for a longer time.
I hear you.
So I mean, it's like the same principles, but one technique that I did want to mention, I've seen it on Instagram a bunch, so I'm sure people have heard it, but 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding. So that's 5 things you see, 4 things you feel, 3 things you hear.
1 second.
Hold on. 2 things you smell and 1 thing you can taste.
There we go.
So yeah, that's like, obviously you just connect back with your senses and, like, really start to embody your experience. I've been listening to this woman, Tara Brock, and she talks about how when we, like, get lost in our thoughts and get attached to our thoughts and feelings, that we live in kind of a virtual reality. And so when you're not living, like, in reality itself, you're gonna, like, something's wrong, right? So the only way that we can experience reality is through our bodies. So I don't know if that's exactly what you're asking, but, like,
no, I get it.
Yeah, it's kind of like people, like me especially, like, when I start to get anxious and I, like, retreat into my own head, you know, like, dissociate and do all that stuff, and that's not gonna do anything to help, right? So, like, only by, like, being aware of our physical experience can we, like, really, like, experience the moment. And, like,
we've done this before, and we say it's not easy because this stuff isn't easy, right? Like, anxiety, to whatever extent, mental health in general, everybody struggles with it, and to different levels. But these kind of solutions, it's something that you would be employing every day. And if you're seeing yourself improve by 1% every single day, like, that's really the goal, because you're not going to break your mental health issues overnight, right? This idea of holding us in the present, trying to remind people, live every day, one day at a time. Obviously build and worry for your future, but you have a locus of control, and you want to focus on the stuff that you can control.
Right. I thought of 2 things there. Like, first of all, like, thinking patterns are habits. So obviously you're not going to change a habit overnight. And then the other thing with, like people refer to meditation as practice, right? So you're not gonna, like, you have to work at it and like continue to try and practice, and then it'll eventually hopefully bleed into the rest of your life.
The last thing I wanted to touch on, because I think we're getting close to 35 minutes, is The Power of Positive Thinking. It's a book by Norman Vincent Peale. I read it in 2020, and I passed it along to Nicholas. He read it, Tyler read it, Kale read it. So whoever wants to read it next.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Exactly. But the way Peale looks at it, he's combining active positive thought replacement with faith and spirituality to help control your everyday life. Obviously, like we've been trying to say, there's only so many things you can control. Like, you can control how you act in the face of a situation, but you can't necessarily control you getting that job. You know what I'm saying? Yep. There's things you should spend your time worrying about and things you shouldn't spend your time worrying about. And like, this book really...
Wait,
go ahead.
I don't think you should spend any of your time worrying.
Okay, let's attack that.
I don't know if I'm gonna get this exactly right, but there's a quote in Matthew on the Sermon of the Mount: "Worry not for the morrow, for the morrow will bring," or like sufficient for the day, or the evils thereof. Your worry will not bring you anything. So like, basically, why do it at all?
So then, obviously, I agree with you, but that is way easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
But the things I wanted to talk about this book, there's 17 chapters. I'm only going to highlight a few that I really enjoyed. The first one, Believe in Yourself. The second one, which is really important, I reread this chapter yesterday, A Peaceful Mind Generates Power. The first time I read this book, I'm not going to lie, I was trying to look at it from a very secular standpoint, and I felt like that really wasn't possible. Eventually, I understood that the lessons that he was trying to teach, they really facilitate themselves when they're looped in with faith and spirituality. And obviously, like, I don't want to sit here and push this book as this is going to solve all your problems, but if you take it as a guide for information, I really think he'll help you change the way you think.
I think it's important, like it was a really good book, and I think it's important to like realize what he said, but like, obviously you're not going to go up to somebody that's sad and tell them, oh, just think positive thoughts. Yeah. But I mean, like, if you can like take that on yourself, it's like, it makes it a lot simpler, because you can purposely like put positive thoughts in your head, but you might not believe them at first, but you will eventually.
Exactly.
And this actually like goes down to your brain chemistry. It's called neuroplasticity. So like, the more that you think a thought, the more it becomes a habit, and like it'll like continue. So if you purposely look for the good, you'll just start seeing it everywhere. Exactly. I've heard this described as the red car phenomenon.
I was about to say the same thing. It's like, as soon as I started driving my Civic, then I could see all the Civics on the road.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you start, like, that's part of like treatment for depression, like, and journaling too, you can like write down the positive things that happen in your day. So like, once you purposely start to do that, then you'll just start seeing it automatically, because your brain is like wired that way. So you can essentially rewire your brain. I just think that like positive and negative thoughts like essentially hold, I guess, no weight really, but equal weight. Like, there's no reason to believe negative thoughts more than positive ones.
Right.
That's just the way we're like
trained, or well,
even partly, like, we're conditioned that way, but also like our biology is set up like that. Like, we have a negativity bias, and like the reason for that is like for survival, because there's a bunch of ways you could die, but like, so like we tend to look at the negative automatically, but there's no concrete reason to believe negative thoughts more. Is there like a point in that journey that you knew for sure, like, this is what I want to do, like where it really clicked for you? You really knew you wanted to be a coach?
Yes. And so the year before I graduated high school, I went back and coached the football team I had played for. Mm-hmm. So it was like a band. Well, actually, no, I was in the same minor football association, but coaching the really young kids, like the entry level age group at that time. That summer of coaching convinced me that's what I wanted to do. So I knew even in grade 12 that somehow coaching was going to be part of what I did. Back then, you could go back and be a 12R. You could go back and play as a returning grade 12, second year grade 12. And I actually, I did that for a semester. And they knew it was only a semester, so I didn't play a ton. But what I did do is I was also assistant coaching our JV team at my high school at the same time, because I already had the bug. So by the time I got to college and university, I was like, that's it, I'm in. I'm fully in.
Nice. And you mentioned that you were kind of an apprentice under Ken Larson. That was his name?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Ken's very intense.
Okay.
And that was a unique experience for me, because I had never been around I had been around coaches that by today's standards would almost be called abusive. Mm-hmm. And that was just the way it was back then. Right. But Ken brought a different type of intensity that I loved, because it forced me to just be sharp and on my toes at all times. Mm-hmm. He was really bringing, and if you're a Canadian basketball fan and you know the name Jack Donahue, Ken played for Jack Donahue, Coach Donahue. So he was trying to bring a lot of those life lessons and all the things that make Coach Donahue beloved across Canada, trying to bring that into his coaching. So I got that firsthand, and got the lunch break stories about their trip to wherever, and getting that human touch, and hearing about some of those adventures, which really even more made me go, you can do more than just draw X's and O's. You can do more than just pace up and down the sidelines and yell. You can touch people's lives, and you can be involved in ways that at that time I really didn't know about. I mean, football coaching is a little different. Like, there's a testosterone level around football teams that, we tend not to really engage a lot, or at least that's the way I was taught. So that was really the first time I really saw a coach have, back then we would have said push those other buttons.
Right.
As well as just trying to get the athletic performance out of guys, and that was meaningful for me. That was real. And the nice thing was, he was an instructor at that time, like a sessional, really, on campus. So I could go and see him in the fall and stay in touch with him, and kind of go back and learn some lessons and things. And I'm going to say that the guy that was the men's basketball coach for the Golden Bears at the time, I don't know why. To this day, I don't know why. But there were a lot of people that were scared to go up to his office, but I could go knock on his door, and if he wasn't busy, be like, yeah, come on in, sit down. Mm-hmm. What do you want to know? What's the question? And I'd ask, like, hey, I sat there and watched you, watch practice yesterday, and you did this thing, and I'm wondering why. He'd throw his feet up on the desk and explain the whole thing to me.
Right.
And why, I don't know. Like, I didn't earn that by being a former player. Maybe some of the guys on the team vouch for me, I don't know, but I was really fortunate to have that experience as well. So I've tried to remember that here, that if somebody were to come up to me on a Monday or Tuesday and go, hey, I was watching you do this thing,
right.
Absolutely I'm going to answer your question, because people did that for me. So that's the least I can do to pay that back.
So you said earlier that that's just how it was at the time, and how do you think that has changed?
So that era was completely different. Like, that era was the era of, well, want your guys to work harder, you insult their family, you talk about their manhood, or you talk whatever.
Nothing's off limits.
Nothing's off limits. You almost didn't want coach to find out the members of your family, because somehow that was going to end up in a conversation.
Right.
So an entirely different way of coaching, which was motivating and being hard, and iron forges iron. Right. So the harder I am on them, the stronger they will become. And I'm going to say that there are a lot of really tough SOBs that came out of that because you had to be. But I also think there were probably some pretty talented folks that went and found other things to do.
Right.
I think we're seeing that with one sport in Canada in particular, where what's going on in the locker rooms and what's going on in the culture of the parents and in the stands and stuff is more and more kids are dropping out of that sport. And we're finding that numbers in other sports like soccer or basketball and things are growing because people are like, that one I don't like so much anymore. I'm going to try this one. So even that blunt delivery, I think now, say in the last 15 years, that blunt delivery is still coming from a place of I care.
Right.
But I'm just not, the only thing more painful than truth is false hope.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm not going to tell you, if you just did these two things, you'd be starting. No, I'm just going to bluntly tell you, look, you're behind that guy, but I need 8 good minutes from you. And I'm just being blunt. And then you got to walk away from that and go, oh man, that hurt. But it comes from a place of, I just want to be honest and truthful with you.
Right.
And that's, you can call me a lot of things, but you can never call me a liar.
You calling me a liar?
I ain't calling you a truther.
Do you think that guys are getting too soft?
Athletes? Is that what you're trying to get at?
Basketball players and stuff. Like, I know a lot of older coaches especially will make that comment and say like, oh, guys are just way too soft now, they can't handle like anything.
Buddy, you're softer than a Tootsie Roll fruit cup.
They're just not tough enough, or do you think that it's a more effective way of coaching?
Back a couple of years ago when I was a little crazy and I thought I was going to be writing a blog and doing all kinds of things, one of the articles I was going to write was titled something to the effect of, I can't yell at your kids anymore. And not, from this point of view, just go with me for a second here. The parenting has changed.
Right.
So I go down into the locker room, because we go downstairs, like we're at like the old Chicago Stadium, and after a game, a parent will come up to me, and there was always the same couple of parents, and you can almost guess who's. Would say, wow, you must have really peeled the paint off the locker room at halftime. Like, those guys just came out and just gave her. Well, can you remember how many times, can you count how many times I went in there and just peeled the paint off the locker room?
Well, you specifically, none. Especially, like, at halftime. In a practice, sure, but that's probably just because you were having a bad day. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It wasn't the effective way to get through to us.
And that is because your parents have changed the way parents parent. Right? The way caregivers give care has changed. So if you've never had your parent, your guardian, sit down and blast you, like if you run the family car into a tree in the front yard and they just look at you and go, it's not that I'm mad, I'm just disappointed. Well, I know what it would have been like at home for me, and it would have been a little bit more than that.
Right.
But if you're not used to that, the first time you're getting that paint peeling is here, you don't know how to respond to that.
Especially, like, coming from my position, it's like, you're not my father.
You're not my dad!
Right? You definitely can't speak to me that way. So it's like, obviously there's a respect thing because you are my coach and you are in a position of power. But it's like, at what level are we willing to come to a consensus and say, hey, let's talk as human beings, because you have the knowledge and you see from the third point perspective the mistakes that we're doing, but it's like, I also know who I am as a human being. So the delivery of us working as a group to improve, as opposed to being berated and just having to deal with that, yeah, I definitely think it's much healthier.
It's different.
It's different.
It's different for sure, and most people would say healthier.
Yeah.
I agree. And so, going back to your question, let me ask you then. So do you think players are softer now, given that conversation?
No, I don't think they're like soft, or I would agree things have just kind of changed.
Things have evolved.
Right.
Yeah.
They've changed. So, I mean, the amount of beyond respect, the amount of adoration or the amount of permission that we give authority figures now. There's a comic about teaching where it's like 1950. The parents are coming over the dinner table and go, why do you have those marks? 2020, they're coming over the teacher's desk going,
why does my kid have those marks?
Yeah, when I came home and something went wrong at school, my parents took the teacher's side every single time.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that evolution in education now, where the parents
Right.
no, they're taking their student's side, their kid's side on that 8 out of 10 times.
Mm-hmm.
So in that evolution and the way we've changed authority figures, same thing. We used to drop kids off at the rink or at the gym, and coach was surrogate parent. And what coach said goes. If I said everybody has to have the same haircut, parents would go, okay, I guess they're getting a haircut. End of story. Because coach said.
Right.
Well, that generation's gone.
Mm-hmm.
That time frame is gone. So are players softer? No, but they're sure different.
Mm-hmm.
And the differences aren't necessarily bad. They're not a negative. But the quick shorthand that a lot of old coaches, and I can put myself in that category, thankfully, is, they're softer, they're different, they don't handle stuff, like they don't take a dressing down in front of their teammates the way they used to. Well, did anyone like really getting dressed down in front of their No, like the difference is now you guys feel like the athletes of this generation feel that they have the agency, the ability to come up to coach after practice and go, I don't appreciate that.
Right.
Please talk to me like a human being. So that changes things.